Hi, this is Anil and welcome to the video tutorial for the Learning Lab on C++ programming. So in this tutorial we're going to learn about the static keyword in C++. In C++ we can use this static inside a function as a class member and also as a class member function. So we're going to see all that things in detail. Alright, the first thing that I want you guys to teach you is about using static inside a function. So when we use static with a variable inside a function, what happens is that variable will be available through the function calls. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, I'm gonna create a function called display, and inside this function you're gonna create a static variable. To create a static variable, we need to use a keyword static and then the variable name, let's say int counter. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna print out how many times this display function is called. So first we're gonna initialize this one to a value of 0 here, and then I'm gonna display using the cout, and I'm gonna say display function called, and I'm gonna refer our counter variable. Again I'm gonna say times, and let's end this line. Alright, now we have a function called display. Inside of this display function we have declared an static variable, and we're just printing how many times this function is called. So here in my main function, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call the display function, and also one more thing, we need to increment this counter value, otherwise the value will be always 0. So I'm gonna write plus counter, which is equal to counter plus 1, and I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna build and run this now. Okay, we need to do the function prototyping, so I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it here above and save it, build and run it again, and it says display function called 1 times. Now I'm gonna call this display function more times, so I'm gonna copy it and paste it. Alright, save it, build and run this. So now you guys can see display function called 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. So what happened here is this line where we have initialized this static variable will be executed only once. In other words, this line will be executed when we call this display function at the first time, and the next time, since this is a static variable, this counter will be stored in the heap. It is available between the function calls. So when this display is called in a second time or the third time or the fourth time, this statement will not be executed, and here this counter will be pointed to the variable which is stored in the heap. Whatever the value stored in that variable will be incremented because of this plus. Alright, the next thing that I want you guys to teach you is using the static keyword inside the class as class members and also as class member functions. Alright, now we're gonna see how to use this static inside a class as a class member and as a class member function. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, we're gonna create a class called humans, and in this program that we're gonna build, we're gonna store how many humans are created. So let's begin. So first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna define a class, and let me call it as human, and inside this class let's have a public access specifier, and here we're gonna create a static variable. So to create a static variable we need to use the keyword static, and then the data type, it's gonna be int, and the name, so let's say human count. Alright, now we have a static variable. So the first thing is, when we create a static variable in our class as a class member, this variable will be shared between all the objects of this class. In other words, this human count or this static member of a class has class scope. So no matter how many objects we create of this class, there will be only one copy of this static member variable human count. Alright, the next thing is, you can't initialize this static class member inside that class or in the definition of that class. You need to do it outside. So make sure to initialize all the static class members in your program before creating the objects of that class. So the next thing is, where and how to access the static class member. So here if you want to access this outside the class, what you need to do is you need to write the data type, it's going to be int, and then the class name human, and then we need to use the scope resolution operator, and then the variable name human count, and we can initialize that here using the assignment operator. The next thing is, since this static class member has class scope, we can access this value without creating an object. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, I'm gonna access that. So to do that, I'm gonna write cout, and it's gonna be human, the class name, the scope resolution operator, and then the variable name. I'm gonna build and run this. You guys can see we can access that without creating any object. And the next thing is how to use this static member variable inside the member functions. So we can use this variable inside this class member function just like the way we were using any other variables or any other class members. So here, just for the demonstration purpose, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. Let's call it as human total, and this function is going to display how many humans are present in our program. So it's going to be there are, and then I'm going to refer this human count. So it's going to be human underscore count, just like the way we were using any other class variables. Peoples are in this program. All right, now let's end this line and add the semicolon. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna build a constructor. So to do that, we need to use the class name human and then no parameters. And here what we're gonna do is we're gonna increment the value of this human count. So it's gonna be human count plus plus. All right, now in our main function we're gonna create an object. So first, after this cout statement, and before that, let me end this line. All right, now I'm gonna create an object. So it's gonna be human, and let me call it as Anil, and then I'm gonna call this human total function using the object Anil, human total. And after that, I'm gonna copy this statement cout and paste it again. All right, now I'm gonna build and run this program. So now you guys can see, first we had 0, that's because of this initialization, and then it says there are 1 people in this program, and that is from this human total function. So when we create an object, whatever the value of this human count variable, which was previously 0, was incremented and it became 1, and that's why it printed there are 1 people in this program. And then we printed that using the class name and then the scope resolution operator, and we got the same value. So similarly, if I close this and create any other objects, let's say human Anjali and human, let's say Rashmit, and human Sandeep. Now if I build and run this, we get there are 4 people in this program. That's because when we create this object, the value of this variable is incremented, and since there is only 1 copy of this variable for all the objects that we create, that change will be reflected through all the objects. So that's why when we access that using this Anil, we get there are 4 peoples in this program. So when we use a static class member in our program, all the objects that are created from that class are gonna share that particular static class member, and there will be only 1 copy of that variable. And if we change that value using any object, then that change will be reflected through all other objects. So in the next tutorial, we can learn about the static member functions, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.